I'm Alara, 38, female. I live in a small two-bedroom apartment that's almost always covered in fabric scraps and stray threads, a happy casualty of the sewing business I run from my living room. My world revolves around two things: my 16-year-old son, Leo, and the custom dresses I create. For years, I believed that was enough, that I could manage the delicate, often frayed relationship with my mother through careful handling. I was wrong. It took a life-threatening emergency to realize that some relationships aren't just frayed. They're rotten to the core, and the only thing to do is cut them off completely. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. Life with my mother, Margaret, had always been a negotiation. A dance of avoiding certain topics, swallowing comments, and presenting a version of my life that was polished enough to avoid her sharpest criticisms. At 62, she was a woman who saw the world in black and white, right and wrong, and her way was always right. As a single mother running a small business from home, I was a walking, breathing collage of what she considered questionable life choices. A seamstress, Alara, it's a hobby, not a career, she'd say, her tone dripping with disappointment. And poor Leo, growing up without a father figure, you should have thought of that. My sister, Chloe, a nurse 3 years my junior, bore the brunt of it with me. We were a united front, a silent alliance against our mother's constant judgment. Chloe, having chosen a respectable profession, got off a little easier, but she never failed to defend me. Mom, Alara is a successful business owner. She's an artist, she'd argue, which would only earn her a dismissive wave. Leo was my mother's favorite target, though often indirectly. He has a severe peanut allergy, something he's managed his whole life with caution and maturity. To Margaret, however, it was a flaw, a dramatic inconvenience. All this fuss over a nut, she'd scoff. In my day, we just ate what was on our plates. Kids today are so fragile. She would say this with Leo right there in the room, her words chipping away at his confidence. I'd always step in, a firm mom, that's enough, but the sting lingered long after she left. This fragile peace was maintained by distance and carefully managed visits. We'd go over for Sunday dinners once a month, brace ourselves for the onslaught of passive-aggressive remarks, and then retreat back to our sane, quiet life. I told myself it was for Leo's sake, so he'd have a grandmother. I reasoned that her toxic brand of love was better than no love at all. It was a lie I kept telling myself because the truth was too painful to confront. The truth was that my mother didn't see me or my son. She saw her own disappointments reflected back at her. Every choice I made that was different from hers was, in her eyes, a personal rejection of everything she stood for. The threads holding us together were thin, stretched taut with years of resentment. I just didn't know how close they were to snapping. It happened on a Friday evening. Leo was at a friend's birthday party, and I was working on a complicated wedding dress alteration. A cascade of silk and lace spread across my living room floor. I was in my element, focused on the delicate beating, when my phone rang. It was an unknown number, and my heart immediately lurched. A mother's intuition is a powerful, terrifying thing. It was the mother of Leo's friend, her voice frantic. Alara, you need to get to the emergency room. Now, Leo, he ate something. We think it was cross-contamination. He's having a reaction. The world tilted. I don't remember grabbing my keys or running to the car. My mind was a blur of worst-case scenarios, the chilling words from his allergist echoing in my ears. Anaphylaxis can be rapid. The EpiPen buys you time. Get to a hospital. His friend's mom had administered his auto-injector, a fact for which I will be eternally grateful, but the terror was absolute. I arrived at the hospital in a daze and found Leo on a gurney in the ER, his face swollen, his breathing labored. He was surrounded by doctors and nurses, and I felt a wave of helpless panic wash over me. I grabbed his hand, and his eyes, barely visible slits in his puffed-up face, found mine. Mom, he rasped, and my heart broke. The next hour was a living nightmare. They stabilized him, but he was weak and scared. As I sat by his bed, holding his hand and trying to project a calm I did not feel, my training kicked in. In a crisis, you call family. You don't go through it alone. My sister Chloe was on a night shift and couldn't be reached, so with a trembling hand, I dialed my mother. She answered on the third ring. Alara, it's late. Mom. I choked out, tears blurring the fluorescent lights above me. It's Leo. We're in the ER. He had a severe allergic reaction. It was really bad. I expected a gasp. I expected concern. Do you need me to come? How is he? Instead, there was a heavy, exasperated sigh. For heaven's sake, Elara, what now? Is this about those ridiculous nuts again? I swear, that child is more trouble than he's worth. You've coddled him, that's the problem. You wrap him in cotton wool, and this is what happens. He's weak. The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. I was standing in a sterile beeping room. My son was struggling to breathe in a bed a few feet away, and my own mother was using this moment to lecture me, to insult my child. What? I whispered, unable to process the cruelty. You heard me, she snapped, her voice cold and devoid of any empathy. This is what you get for being so overly dramatic about everything. A little bit of peanut butter never killed anyone in my day. Tell him to toughen up. You both need to. I couldn't speak. The line between shock and white-hot rage blurred. My son, my brilliant, kind, brave son, was lying in a hospital bed, and his grandmother's reaction was to call him weak, to call him trouble, to blame me. In that moment, something inside me shattered. It wasn't just the shock, it was the horrifying clarity. This wasn't a flaw in her personality. This was who she was. Don't call me again tonight unless it's a real emergency, she said, as if this didn't qualify. Then she hung up. I stood there, phone in my hand, the dial tone buzzing in my ear. The sounds of the ER faded into a dull roar. The fragile peace hadn't just been broken, it had been incinerated, and in its ashes I saw my mother for the monster she truly was. Leo was admitted overnight for observation. The swelling slowly went down, and his breathing returned to normal. By morning, he was exhausted but stable. He was my brave boy, apologizing for ruining my night, as if any of it was his fault. I held him close, stroking his hair, my heart aching with a fierce, protective love that felt sharper and more defined than ever before. While he slept, I sat in the uncomfortable vinyl chair beside his bed, my mother's words replaying in my mind like a poisonous mantra. You've coddled him. He's weak, more trouble than he's worth. The initial rage had subsided, leaving behind a cold, heavy certainty. It was the kind of clarity that changes you permanently. I finally managed to reach Chloe as her shift ended. I explained what happened, my voice flat and devoid of the hysteria I'd felt just hours before. Chloe was silent for a long moment, and when she finally spoke, her voice was thick with fury. She said, "What, Elara, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. It's not your fault," I said numbly. "No," she replied, her voice hardening. "It's hers, and I'm done making excuses for her. We both should have been done a long time ago." That's when she told me, a few weeks prior, at a family get-together I had missed because of a work deadline, Margaret had been holding court. The topic of Leo's upcoming 16th birthday had come up. Someone asked what he was like these days. According to Chloe, our mother had sighed dramatically and said, "Oh, you know Leo. He's a sweet boy, but so delicate. Everything is a major drama. His allergies, his sensitivities. It's a burden, honestly. Elara has made him that way. She smothers him." Hearing this second hand confirmation felt like a shovel digging into an open wound. It wasn't a one-time slip of a cruel tongue in a moment of stress. It was a pattern. It was a narrative she was spinning to the rest of our family, painting me as a neurotic, overprotective mother, and my son as a fragile burden. She was systematically undermining my parenting and defining my son by his medical condition to anyone who would listen. Why? The question pounded in my head. Why would a grandmother do that? As I sat there, watching the steady rise and fall of my son's chest, it all started to click into place. My mother resented my independence. My little business, which she dismissed as a hobby, had given me a life that didn't require her approval or financial support. My son, the center of my universe, was someone I had successfully raised on my own, without the father figure she insisted we needed. Our happiness was a quiet rebellion against her worldview and Leo's allergy. It was just a convenient weapon for her to use, a focal point for all her criticisms about my life, my choices, my very existence. She couldn't stand that I had built a life, a good life, on my own terms. His vulnerability was something she could attack because she couldn't attack my success. It was the deepest, most twisted form of jealousy I had ever encountered. It was the jealousy of a mother towards her own daughter's strength. Bringing Leo home from the hospital was a relief, but our apartment felt different. The air was charged with unspoken truths. I busied myself with work, sinking into the familiar rhythm of the sewing machine, the needle piercing the fabric with a steady, percussive beat. With every stitch, my mind was piecing together a lifetime of smaller cuts, a pattern of cruelty, a pattern of cruelty I had refused to see. It was never just about Leo's allergy. I realized that now. It was about the dress I wore to my high school prom. A little plain, don't you think? She had said, looking me up and down with disapproval. It was about my decision to go to a state college instead of the private one she'd picked out. Well, I suppose it's good to lower your expectations. It was about my small business. For years, she'd introduced me to her friends as, "This is my daughter, Elara. She's creative." The word hung in the air, a euphemism for unsuccessful. Each memory was a small, gray thread, insignificant on its own, but woven together, they created a tapestry of relentless, corrosive criticism. She had never celebrated a single achievement without a caveat, never offered support without a backhanded compliment. Her love was entirely conditional, a prize I could never quite earn. I called Chloe again that evening, needing to talk it out to make sure I wasn't going crazy. "Do you remember when Leo won the regional science fair in middle school?" I asked her, of course. Chloe said instantly, "He built that amazing miniature ecosystem. I was so proud of him." "Do you remember what Mom said when I told her?" There was a pause. "Oh, Elara, I do," she said. "That's nice, dear. At least he's good at indoor things, since he can't really play sports properly." I squeezed my eyes shut. I'd forgotten that one. I had buried it, like so many others. She had a unique talent for turning his biggest triumphs into reminders of his perceived limitations. She wasn't just a critical person, she was strategically cruel. It was designed to keep me small, to keep Leo small, to ensure we never felt too confident or too independent of her judgment. It was all about control. As a single mother, I had left her sphere of influence. I made my own money. I made my own decisions. I raised my son my own way. This infuriated her. She couldn't control me, so she tried to poison my confidence, to make me doubt myself so deeply that I'd come running back, seeking the approval she held like a weapon. The emergency with Leo wasn't an isolated incident. It was just the moment she finally showed her entire hand. There was no love there, not for me and certainly not for my child. There was only ego, bitterness, and a desperate need to be the center of a universe that had long since stopped revolving around her. The threads weren't just frayed, they were toxic, and I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my bones that I had to take up the scissors and cut them for good. For a week, I didn't answer my mother's calls. She left voicemails, each one more indignant than the last. They started with feigned concern. "Elara, I'm just calling to see how Leo is. You haven't called me back," quickly morphing into accusation. "I must say, I find this silence very childish. I am your mother, and I deserve some respect," and finally settling into manipulative guilt. "After all I've done for you, this is how you treat me. I hope you're happy." Each message solidified my resolve. I wasn't being childish, I was being protective. I wasn't being disrespectful. I was respecting myself and my son for the first time. Listening to her messages felt like watching a stranger. The warmth and maternal love I had spent my life projecting onto her simply wasn't there. Leo was quiet, but observant. He saw the storm brewing in me. "Are you okay, Mom?" he asked one afternoon as I was pinning a hem. "You seem different." I stopped what I was doing and looked at him, truly looked at him. He was strong, resilient, and kind despite everything. He deserved a life free from that casual cruelty. "I'm better than okay, sweetie." I told him, my voice steady. "I'm just making some changes for us." My plan wasn't about revenge in the traditional sense. I had no desire to scream at her or cause a huge, dramatic scene. That's what she would want. It would feed her narrative of me being an unstable, emotional wreck. My plan was colder, quieter, and far more permanent. It was an amputation. I was going to cut her out of our lives, and I was going to do it on my terms, in a way she couldn't twist. Chloe told me that Margaret's 63rd birthday dinner was in 2 weeks. It was being held at our aunt's house. The whole family would be there. It was the perfect and final stage. "Are you sure you want to do it then?" Chloe asked, her voice laced with concern. "It'll be public." "It has to be," I explained. For years, she has performed for an audience. She has painted her picture of me and Leo to the whole family. I'm going to present the truth to that same audience, not with anger, but with facts. I'm not going to argue. I'm just going to state my boundary. My plan was simple. I would attend the dinner with Leo. I would be polite and composed. I would wait for the inevitable moment when my mother made a passive-aggressive comment or tried to assert her authority. And when she did, I would calmly and clearly inform her that until she could acknowledge her behavior and offer a genuine apology to Leo, she would no longer have a place in our lives. There would be no yelling, no tears. It would be a clean, sharp cut, like taking a pair of shears to a finished seam, severing the excess thread. For weeks I had felt like a tangled mess. Now I felt a sense of purpose. I was no longer a daughter trying to win her mother's love. I was a seamstress, and I was about to tailor my life into a shape that finally fit. We walked into my aunt's house, and the atmosphere was thick with a tension only family can create. My mother was seated at the head of the dining table, holding court as usual. When she saw us, her face broke into a wide, theatrical smile. "Alara, Leo, you came. I was so worried when you weren't answering my calls." It was a performance for the dozen relatives gathered around the table. Leo and I took our seats, and I could feel my mother's eyes on us throughout the meal. She was testing the waters, making little comments. "Leo, you're looking a bit peaky. Alara, you must make sure he's getting enough iron." I just smiled politely and said, "He's fine, Mom, thank you." The moment came, as I knew it would, during dessert. My aunt brought out the birthday cake, and everyone sang. As Margaret was about to blow out her candles, she looked directly at Leo. "Make a wish for me, Leo," she said, her voice cloying sweet. "Wish that your mother stops worrying so much. It's so draining for everyone." The table fell silent. It was a direct hit, packaged as a joke. This was it. I placed my fork down gently on my plate. The small clink sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. "Actually, Mom," I said, my voice perfectly calm and even, "my worrying seems pretty justified." Margaret's smile faltered. "Whatever do you mean, dear?" I looked around the table, making brief eye contact with my aunts, uncles, and cousins. 2 weeks ago, I began keeping my voice level. My son was in the emergency room, struggling to breathe. It was terrifying. When I was at my most scared, I did what I thought a daughter should do. I called my mother for support. I turned my gaze fully on her now. Her face had gone pale, and do you all know what she said? She told me that my son was weak. She said he was more trouble than he was worth. She said this emergency was my fault for coddling him, and then she hung up on me. A collective gasp went through the room. My aunt stared at Margaret, her mouth agape for my entire life. I continued, my voice gaining strength. "I have accepted the criticism. I have allowed you to undermine my choices and insult my child. I did it because I thought that having a grandmother, even a cruel one, was better than nothing. I was wrong." I stood up, and Leo, who I had prepared for this, stood with me. He looked at his grandmother, not with fear, but with a quiet dignity that made my heart swell with pride. "So this is my birthday gift to you, Mom," I said, my voice clear and final. "It's the gift of a boundary. Leo and I will no longer be a part of your life. We will not be coming to family dinners. We will not be answering your calls. This will not change until you give my son the genuine, heartfelt apology he has deserved for years. Not just for that night, but for everything." Margaret's face was a mask of fury and shock. "How dare you?" she hissed. "How dare you ruin my birthday and turn the family against me?" "I'm not turning anyone against you," I replied softly. "I'm just telling them the truth. Your actions did this, not me. Goodbye, everyone." We turned and walked out of the house. We didn't run. We walked with a calm, deliberate pace. As the front door clicked shut behind us, I felt a lifetime of weight lift from my shoulders. It wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. The fallout was immediate and predictable. My phone was bombarded with texts. A few were from my mother, a stream of vitriolic rage, accusations, and self-pity. A couple were from flying, monkey relatives telling me I was cruel and heartless to do that to my own mother on her birthday. I deleted them all without replying, but then a different kind of message came through. It was from Chloe. "I am so proud of you I could burst. Aunt Carol just called me. She said after you left, Margaret tried to play the victim, but no one was buying it. They all heard what you said. You gave them the truth." Another text came from my cousin. "I'm sorry. I never realized how bad it was. You did the right thing." The days that followed were quiet. The constant, low-level anxiety that had been my companion for years began to fade. I no longer braced myself before answering the phone. I no longer rehearsed conversations in my head. The silence from my mother was not a punishment, it was a reward. My work flourished. Without the constant drain of my mother's negativity, I had more energy, more creativity. I took on more ambitious projects, and my little business started to grow in ways I had only dreamed of. My apartment, once just a place to live and work, began to feel like a true sanctuary. The biggest change, however, was in Leo. It was like watching a flower that had been growing in the shade finally turn toward the sun. He seemed lighter, more confident. He started trying out for the school play, something he'd always been too shy to do before. He talked more at dinner, sharing stories about his friends and his classes without the fear of his words being twisted or judged. One evening, about a month after the birthday dinner, Leo and I were sitting in the living room. I was sketching a new design, and he was reading. He looked up from his book and said, "I don't miss her." I looked at him, my pen pausing over the page. "I know, honey, me neither. It's just quieter now," he said. A good quiet. He was right. Our life was not filled with drama or grand gestures. It was built from small, peaceful moments. The hum of my sewing machine, the smell of dinner cooking, the sound of Leo's laughter. We had cut the toxic thread, and in its place we had stitched together a new life. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was ours. It was strong, it was resilient, and it was, for the first time, truly and completely at peace. We had finally tailored our world to fit just the two of us, and the fit was perfect.